Okay, we should be live right now, and I'm really excited about this webinar we have going. It's going to be really important information we're going to cover tonight, as always. But, you know, there's a lot of confusion in the world of diabetes, and we just want to cover that information and make things clear for people. So we're going to do that tonight. And what I want people to do, I'm going to start a poll in the chat box, and I hope you all see it as you come in. And I would like to know where you live and what type of diabetes you're living with. So I'm going to load this poll. Click Start Poll. Here we go. And let's see. So everybody should be getting a poll. And you can write in the chat box. Let's make sure the chat box is working and I can hear from you guys. So let us know where you are living. And also fill out the poll of which type of diabetes you're living with, or do you know somebody who's living with diabetes? We would love to see that information. So, okay, we got one person filling out the poll. That's good. Love it. But I don't see anything in the chat box yet. So somebody write in the chat box, where do you live? We're coming to you from Santa Monica right here. Okay, good. We got some, it's working good. Wales, terrific. Okay, we got someone from Houston, Madison, Wisconsin, wonderful. Love that. Let's see, how's our poll doing here? All right, people answering the poll. This is terrific. Jacksonville, Florida. All right. Long Island, New York. We got Fort Myers. So I see a lot of Florida people here. I went to high school in Florida, in Sarasota, and then I went to college at the University of Florida in Gainesville. So love this. Got another person from Naples. Here we go. Terrific. This is really good, really good. So I love getting people coming in on the polls here. We're 53% type 2 diabetes, 21% pre-diabetes, 11% type 1 right now. Go Gators. All right, Ken. Terrific. Love it. Let's see. We got Glendale, Arizona. All right. North Carolina. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. So we're going to give it a little more time here for people to come and join us. We should be getting a good number of people to join us for this webinar. Let's see, how's our poll doing? We have 50% type 2, 23% prediabetes, type 1%, type 1 is 13%. Love it. Let's see here. We got someone from Redmond. I'm just curious, this could be fun. Why don't you guys put in the chat box, what did you eat for breakfast today? I'd love to hear what you ate for breakfast. My breakfast today, we had, there was a special guest, one of our members of our coaching program. They have a young daughter who's 4 years old living with type 1 diabetes, and they were in town, and they came over for breakfast this morning. It was a beautiful family, 4 people. And we had, what did we have? We had white sapote, we had dates, we had some strawberries, we had figs. It was lots of good stuff. It was a lot of good stuff. Terrific breakfast. So let's see, what do we got here? A legume soup, grape nuts with almond milk, pecan pieces, and banana. Okay. Somebody says, I don't eat breakfast. Almond banana smoothie, a power bar. Okay. Bananas, oatmeal and blueberries, brown rice, veggies, and black bean, some type of sauce. Okay. Oatmeal, fresh juice. Okay. We get leftover tacos. Okay. All right. A green smoothie. I'm seeing a lot of healthy meals here. This is good. This is really good. I love it. Let's see. We have peanut butter toast. Okay. Oatmeal, apples, peanut butter. Okay. Good. All right. We're going to talk about a lot of this stuff. Let's see. A protein shake with Ezekiel bread here. Almond butter, honey. All right. Oatmeal with fruit. All right. This is fun. I love this. This is good. Stephanie says hello. Hello, Stephanie. Good to have you with us. What else we got here? Mixed fruits and a protein drink. Love it. Love it. Love it. Let's see how our poll is coming out right now. We are at 54% of people living with type 2 diabetes, 17% pre-diabetes. We have 13% type 1. We have type 1.5 at 4%. 10% don't have diabetes. 3% a loved one has diabetes. So this is good. Getting to know who's here. I love it. Zico bread with no salt, peanut butter, and fresh fruit. Okay. Today was a fast day, but usually banana, apple, orange, berry, spinach smoothie. Okay, here we go. All right, Jeremy had a ham and cheese omelet with bacon. Okay, terrific. Here we go. Let's see, what else? Eggs and vegetables. Okay, good. So we have a little bit of a range in here, a little diversity. That's good. So we can have a discussion about some of this stuff. We're going to get into some details today. So it's going to be fun. If you're new, if you're just coming in, make sure to let us know where you live. We'd love to know where you're living, where you're coming from. And also make sure to fill out the poll and let us know what type of diabetes you're living with, or you don't have diabetes. If you reverse type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes already, you could write don't have diabetes. Or maybe you're here because a loved one has diabetes and you're trying to learn. So if that's the case, you can select that one. All right. London. Okay, terrific. It's probably pretty late in London, so thank you for joining us. We got Texas, Rancho Cucamonga, California, Big Lake, Minnesota. All right. I grew up in St. Cloud, Minnesota. So you gotta love good old Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes. Every time I go back, it's a good time. Love it. We got some people in Louisiana, some more in Houston, Texas, Tempe, Arizona. Good stuff. Okay. All right. This is good. This is good. We're going to get started shortly here. Thank you for your patience. We got 124 people so far in the room. So this is good. Should be some more filing in. And I think we'll get started pretty soon. So let me make sure I got a few things ready on my end. I need to pull up some notes here. So Tara is going to be part of this presentation tonight. Cyrus is not going to be able to get here. Maybe he can make it for the Q&A, hopefully. But we are going to deliver this presentation today. Really, really excited about it.
It's going to be a great one, guys.
So here's your stuff here.
Awesome.
Okay, so now let me get the slide going here. I gotta turn this off. I'm gonna share my screen now. Let's pick up this. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see the presentation. So if you can see the presentation and things are looking good, say yes in the chat box. So we make sure that everything is working. And I'll go here. Okay, so the topic to today's webinar, low carb diets. Is improved blood glucose control worth the risk of premature death? So hot topic here, and we're going to get started. So everybody can see things, and we're getting yeses coming in. So let's get started. So our goal today in this webinar is we want to cover what is, very confusing stuff on the internet. So hopefully by the end of this webinar, you can really understand what's going on when you hear amazing stories from both sides. And you can understand why we teach what we teach and why we're telling people to follow a low-fat, plant-based approach. And we want you to be able to really understand why you might see high blood glucose readings when eating high carbohydrate foods. That's really important. It's confusing, and we want to address that. We're also going to talk about how to optimize your insulin sensitivity, why that is so important. We're going to talk about how to reduce your risk of chronic diseases associated with diabetes. And mainly in this webinar, we're going to address two primary misconceptions. And I also just want to say that, look, this is obviously people are very passionate on both sides. This is a respectful webinar. We're just presenting facts and information. If anything gets out of control in the chat box, we're going to have to, let's just make sure that doesn't happen. So with that said, we'll move in here. So we have a bonus at the end. So this webinar, we have something we've never offered before, and I'm really, really excited about this one. I think you will be too. So make sure to stay until the end, and we will talk about the bonus that we're offering. So many of you have probably already heard my story, and let's see.
Sorry, guys. Apparently, the slide isn't showing up as full screen. But
let's see. We go to the chat box. Are you able to see the screen where I am going to talk about my story? If you have any issues with that, please let us know in the chat box. If you can see my screen, which I think you should be able to. Let's see here.
Yeah, I think they can see the slides. So maybe let's just keep going.
We'll keep going. If you have any issues, let us know, and we'll fix things. So I'm going to go through my story really briefly. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 12. I'm 29 now, so I've been living with type 1 diabetes for over 17 years. Initially, when I got diagnosed, I was following the standard American diet.
No, everyone's saying that they're seeing the intro slide.
Okay, so let's see what we can do. Play from start. No, can't see your story.
All right, guys, can you see the slide that now says our goal?
Sorry for the tech issues here. Hopefully,
hopefully we can get this sorted out.
Yeah, if we need to, we can potentially.
No, people are saying no.
All right, so we go to File, Export, Export.
She said that it showed it for a moment and then it went away.
Okay, we're going to try and use a PDF now. Go back to here. Let's try this again. We're going to show this. How about now? Let's see here. The goal is to be on the slide that says our goal. So I think we're good now. So I'm going to go to my slide. This should work. If we have any issues now, let us know. So back to my story here. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 12, and I started following the standard American diet. When you first get diagnosed with type 1, a lot of them, people just, hey, look, we want you to be normal, so don't worry about it, eat whatever you want. I was following the standard American diet. I had terrible allergies. My acne was really bad. Plantar fasciitis was a big problem for me. Being a competitive tennis player, having to wear these big blue boots at night, it was not good. I started making some dietary changes. I tried a Weston A. Price Foundation style diet, which is focusing on grass-fed beef, raw milk, and stuff like that. Eventually tried a really low-carb plant-based diet, which got me taking the least amount of insulin I've ever taken, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later. But I did not feel good and could not maintain that. Eventually, I came to the low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, which I have been following since 2006. It's been amazing. I started then and have never looked back in that time frame. Eat nothing but fruits and vegetables. Never had an A1C above 6.4 with the current one at 5.9. But most importantly is that I feel amazing. My quality of life is amazing. I'm eating the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet in abundance, and I am heart attack proof, which is, again, another thing we're going to talk about later in the webinar.
And my name's Tara. I started eating a plant-based diet in September 2011, so it's been about 6 years now. And I was pretty young when I first made the switch, and I didn't really expect to see a lot of huge improvements. I was doing it because I had heard that it was very healthy and I wanted to try it, but there wasn't anything in particular that I was super hoping to really change in my life. But I saw a lot of improvements that I wasn't even expecting. My digestion improved. I was a runner, and I was, doing triathlons and marathons, and I saw a much faster recovery in between hard workouts. So that was exciting. And I also really healed my relationship with food in wonderful ways, and really found a place of peace and feeling like I was eating in harmony with my body and what really made me feel my best and feel healthiest. So that was really exciting. And after college, I started working with Dr. Neal Barnard and the Physicians Committee. And Dr. Neal Barnard is one of the leaders and luminaries in diabetes. He wrote a book on how to prevent and reverse diabetes, and working with him really helped me to learn more about all of this. The Physicians Committee hosted an international conference on nutrition and diabetes, and I helped to organize that event. I was the main point of contact for all the speakers and got to get to know some of them. While I was there, I helped to lead diabetes nutrition classes once a week, and really got to interact with the community and learn more through that as well. And all of this has really set me up to now be the Director of Nutrition Education at Mastering Diabetes, and I'm so excited to be here with you all.
Okay, we're going to take a quick pause because I think people still can't see the slide. So we will go to escape. And then what we're going to try here is, instead of just sharing that, my entire screen. I'm just going to try and share the entire screen. How's that sound?
Okay.
So I'm going to do that.
Well, maybe we should go do the regular one, not the PDF then, so that we can see the video.
Good point. Okay, we will try PowerPoint. So play from start. Sorry for the tech issue, guys. We did a test and it worked well on the test. So let's see. Can you see misconception number 1? Sugar is the problem on your screen. Let's see how that's going. There's a little bit of a delay, so we have to wait a moment.
Now it works. Yep. Okay. People are saying yes. Yay. Okay.
Okay, guys.
So let's hope this works.
Sorry for that. We are going to get into this now.
Okay. So just to get started here, diabetes is one of the most misunderstood diseases out there. There are a lot of different opinions that get tossed around in regards to how to best manage it. And so to lay a foundation for the points we'll be making later, I'm going to start by addressing one of the biggest misconceptions, and that is that sugar is the problem. All right, we switched slides. Hopefully you can see it. Diabetes is so commonly associated with sugar, with soft drinks, cakes, cookies, all of these things. And here's a cartoon that I thought was funny where it says little girls are made of sugar and spice, but oddly, type 2 diabetes affects both sexes equally. So again, just showing that diabetes and sugar are just so commonly correlated together. And it's not just processed sugar that gets thrown under the bus, but all carbohydrates. Sugars like fructose and glucose are simple forms of carbohydrates, while starches are considered complex forms of carbohydrates. And really, either way, it all ends up as simple sugars floating around in our bloodstream when they get broken down during digestion. And because of that, because carbohydrates and sugar are seen to be the problem, a low-carb diet is often seen as the best approach in diabetes treatment. Here's one website where, they're saying exactly that. Here's another, a guide to healthy low-carb eating with diabetes. The blood sugar diet, where it says improve blood sugars fast, live longer, feel better. And what is the way to do that? A low-carb plan, eating to control your weight and blood sugar. So this is really just the common approach. And then here's another, this is pulled from a website, this photo, and it says foods that don't raise blood sugar. And if you look at these foods, they are all foods that are very low or completely devoid of carbohydrate. But when we look around the world, if we look at the areas of the world that have the least amounts of diabetes, which is the places in lighter yellow, if you can't quite see it, These are countries that eat a predominantly high carbohydrate diet, whereas the countries that have the most diabetes prevalence, the red countries, are the places where the diet is focused primarily on meat and dairy. And we can also look to the blue zones in particular. If you haven't heard of the blue zones, these are the areas of the world where they have the highest numbers of people that live to be centenarians, meaning that they live to be over 100. An author and National Geographic researcher named Dan Buettner went to visit these areas and research them and get to know why it was that they lived the longest. And he actually wrote a book about it called The Blue Zones. And when he looked at the main overlapping principles of these places, the common denominators, one of the main ones that was present in every single area was a high carbohydrate plant-based diet. And these are countries that do not see high rates of diabetes. But you could say that maybe these places have people that just have really good genes. Can we really say it's the diet? Well, let's look at one in particular, which is Loma Linda, California. So they do lots of studies on this population in Loma Linda, California, the Seventh-day Adventist population, because their religion advises them to exercise, not smoke, not drink alcohol, and not eat meat. They're very big on honoring the body and living a healthy lifestyle. And people are pretty good at the first three, but in terms of whether or not to eat meat, some do the vegetarian diet, some take it a step further and fully go vegan, cutting out dairy and eggs too, and some completely disregard it and eat meat anyways. And you can clearly see that within this population, those that eat the most meat have the highest rates of diabetes, and those that eat the highest amounts of carbohydrates have the lowest amount of diabetes. So we can conclude from this that sugar is not the problem, and carbohydrates are not the problem either. Sugar and carbs are simply innocent bystanders in this process, and the true problem is insulin resistance. Now, I hope that you guys can see this little GIF video here. If not, there's someone trying to put glucose inside of a cell, and there's another guy who is named insulin resistance that is blocking the glucose from getting inside the cell. And this essentially explains insulin resistance. So this is another cartoon showing that a man is eating a sandwich and glucose from the food is going into the bloodstream. And then insulin attaches to the cell, and its job is to open up the door of the cell to let glucose in. And so that is what typically should happen in a healthy body. So what happens when someone is experiencing insulin resistance? Well, it all has to do with these yellow blobs. If you can see the yellow blobs here inside of the cell, these are intramyocellular lipid, which is a fancy scientific way of saying that fat is inside the muscle cells. And just to clarify, this image is from Dr. Neal Barnard's Program for Reversing Diabetes. He made this slide, this image here to explain it, and he has a really great way of explaining it. So I'm just going to use that here in explanation with you guys today. So what happens is that fat clogs up the cell and blocks insulin from doing its job. It's as if the fat gums up the lock of the door that insulin is trying to open. And if insulin can't open the door to the cell, then glucose can't get in, and it's left circulating around in our bloodstream, which is what we call hyperglycemia or high blood sugar. So this is why you see a spike in blood glucose when you eat a banana or some potatoes or a high carbohydrate meal. It's not the banana's fault. It's the fat inside the cell blocking the insulin from opening up the door to let the glucose in. So if you see a spike, you are experiencing insulin resistance. But the key here is that if you reduce your dietary fat intake and clear the fat out of the cell, unclogging the lock and enabling the insulin to do its job and open up the door, letting the glucose into the cell, you will no longer see a blood glucose spike when eating these foods. So what foods truly cause insulin resistance? Going back to this photo from before, it's foods like cheese. Cheese is the #1 source of saturated fat in the American diet. And then we've got red meat and even fish Even those healthy omega-3s, you can get them from other sources, and when you get it from fish, some fish is as high as 50% calories coming from fat. So that's definitely something that we want to avoid if we're trying to reduce our chances of getting insulin resistance or reverse insulin resistance within our bodies. Eggs are also very high in fat, including cholesterol, which raises saturated fat, which raises cholesterol. Chicken, even lean meats like chicken, have up to 20% calories coming from fat, whereas something like beans, rice, potatoes, mangoes, those have 3%, 4% calories coming from fat, or sometimes less. And it's not just animal foods, it's also some plant foods. Oil is the most concentrated form of fat that we can possibly eat. It's 100% fat. It's the same way that sugar is, the straight sugars extracted from a food. Oil is fat extracted from a food. So if it's olive oil, it is literally just the fat of the olives. And then foods like olives and avocados can also lead to the development of insulin resistance if they are eaten in excess.
Okay, so let's move on to misconception number 2. This is kind of where it gets fun. So people, you can go on the internet, you can find people who have flatline blood glucose numbers, terrific A1Cs, and they're eating the very foods that Tara just described as causing insulin resistance. This gets pretty confusing. So it's a misconception that just because you have those good numbers, you're in good health. So you'll go on the internet, you'll see all kinds of amazing success stories. So, look at this transformation. This is a website that has 300 plus low-carb success stories, and you look at that picture and you're just like, wow, that is incredible. I'm just going to do whatever she does. That's perfect. Like, that's working. So let us explain where the concern comes in. So losing weight and just having a great blood glucose number is not the whole story. Let's just go through a few examples here. Bob Harper, you guys may have heard of him, recently had a major heart attack. He's a very famous fitness trainer. He was on The Biggest Loser. He's a best-selling author. And he does, he's been on the Rachel Ray Show several times. So I put together a video clip of showing an episode of him on the Rachel Ray Show before his heart attack and then after his heart attack. I don't think the video is going to play here, so I'm just going to recount what happened in the video. So in the first video beforehand, Bob is on the show showing how he makes his buttered coffee in the morning. So he's, I'm going to get my fat that I'm going to use for fuel in the gym for my coffee. And Rachel's jokingly saying, wait, you need fat to go to the gym? Bob says, yes, I want to use fat as a fuel source as opposed to using carbs. And he proceeds to put the ghee in his coffee and make the coffee on the show. And Rachel's like, do you really do this? And he emphatically says, every single morning. And then, so as I'm sure many of you heard, he had a major heart attack. Bob was working out in the gym, and he's really lucky to still be with us. So he later goes on the show. He has a new book, and Rachel's asking him, hey, what's going on with your new diet, new stage of life? And Bob says, I'm definitely a work in progress. I'm learning what is working for me. I have my doctors that are telling me that I should be mostly vegetarian or completely vegetarian, and that's super hard. I love to eat fish. I'm kind of bringing in a Mediterranean-style diet. I'm vegetarian, so I'm really focusing on my fruits, my vegetables, whole grains, but I'm also incorporating fish. Rachel's like, you're a pescatarian? He's like, yeah. And then so they proceed on the show to show some foods that he's eating. So all this food looks delicious, Rachel says. He says, since my heart attack, I've had these weird cravings, and for some reason, oranges. He's really craving oranges. He's eating 3 or 4 every single day. The point here is this is an example of somebody that's super fit. People look up to him. You would not think there's any problem. He has a major heart attack, and now his medical team is telling him, let's move towards more plant-based foods. We have another guy, Jim Fixx. Many of you on the webinar may have heard of him. He wrote a book called The Complete Book of Running, very popular in the 70s. He's widely known as inciting some of the fitness revolution in America. And in this book, he was quoted, and he's quoting another medical doctor, and he was espousing how he agreed with that belief of like, if you can run a marathon under 4 hours, you will not die of a heart attack. And what happened to Jim Fixx? He died of a fatal heart attack while running at the age of 52 years old. Just another example of somebody being really fit, not watching their diet, and dying of a heart attack here. So now let's look at a little bit of research here. This is in the journal Diabetes. The title of this article is The Association of Hemoglobin A1C with Incident Heart Failure Among People Without Diabetes. So in this study, they're looking at people who did not have diabetes. Their A1Cs in the non-diabetic range. So here they studied 11,057 people. 841 people had a heart incident. So we can see some data here. And on the right, you'll see they have 3 different models. So they ran data 3 different ways, and we are using the data that is the least, we're not cherry picking, we're picking the most conservative numbers we can here. So that's model number 3, where they're controlling for the most factors. And 39% of the people who had a heart incident were people who had an A1C of 5.4 or below. So that's a terrific A1C, yet they still had a heart incident. We cannot emphasize this enough. The number 1 killer of people living with diabetes is cardiovascular disease. We need to be looking for dietary and lifestyle solutions that not only just address A1C and blood glucose, whether it's a flatline blood glucose or weight. We need to be looking at things that also address overall health, and importantly, is a very important aspect of that is making sure it's good for our cardiovascular system. So this is a chart here showing how the conditions that insulin resistance is a precursor for all of these conditions. So when somebody is living with insulin resistance, you're increasing your chances for all of these conditions here: neuropathy, blindness, erectile dysfunction, fatty liver, PCOS. So all things obviously nobody wants to have. We have cancer on here, hypertension. It's not good. Nobody wants to be living with insulin resistance. So how do we know that somebody who's following a low carbohydrate diet, like that woman in the beginning with the blue dress and the amazing story, how can we know that that person is likely insulin resistant? And really, the simple, easiest way to address this topic is to see that people who are successfully following these very low carbohydrate diets or ketogenic diets, people are getting the amazing results like that woman you saw in the beginning, are likely eating roughly 30 total grams of carbohydrate or less. It's roughly what they're in. And if they were to do an oral glucose tolerance test, which is a very common way to assess somebody's insulin sensitivity, they'd have to consume 75 grams of carbohydrate in one sitting. So conventionally in the laboratory, that's done with a liquid solution. You could do the same test at home with Whole Foods if you wanted to. And the point is, if you read these blogs, these people who are sharing their success stories, they'll say, look, if I have a little bit of blueberries or a little bit of a potato or something, I see this huge glucose spike. And they blame the carbohydrate food. The carbohydrate food that's the problem. That's what caused my high blood glucose. Whereas, as we just saw earlier, it's actually insulin resistance. That is the reason why they cannot tolerate carbohydrates. So the big point that we're trying to make in this specific webinar is that you can have the amazing results that you see of all the low carb success stories. We're not denying that those results happen, and they can happen, and you could get them if you followed that. Our point is that we want you to have those amazing results and look sexy and feel amazing and lose weight and all that stuff. But we're saying you can accomplish it with healthy carbohydrate-rich foods that taste amazing and also make it so you're incredibly insulin sensitive and reduce your chances of all these other chronic diseases that we addressed on the other slide. So here's an example of Bob Blackburn. This is a testimonial we just recently published on our website. And you can see his numbers in the chart here. Everything getting better, losing a significant amount of weight, over 90 pounds here, and all while eating carbohydrate-rich foods, the foods that are said to have supposedly make this condition worse. And it's just not the case. So to share a couple newer testimonials, I pulled something recent. This is from an email that came in to Cyrus yesterday. This is somebody where their A1C went from 9.1 to 5.3. We're on cloud 9 with joy, super grateful. And again, the point is we're having a healthy A1C, person's losing weight, feeling amazing, all while eating carbohydrate-rich foods. And this is another email we got. This is a person living with type 1 diabetes. This email came in yesterday. This person's been living with type 1 for 57 years, saying they've had all kinds of complications, and our program has opened up a new chapter in Christopher's life. So again, this is another example. We say this over and over and over again on webinars. People come into our program, they follow this approach, they eat more carbohydrate. It's really easy for people, insulin-dependent diabetics. Anybody living with insulin-dependent diabetes, it is super easy in a very short period of time to objectively see how this approach of eating low-fat, plant-based, whole foods can increase your insulin sensitivity. So this person here, their ratio at the mealtime goes from, was 6-to-1, 18-to-1, while their carbohydrate intake goes up, and they're told their basal rate for the long-acting insulin has gone down and lost over 15 pounds. So another example right there. So these are, I just pulled these pictures from the Forks Over Knives website. So I was part of that team for about 6 years and published a lot of these stories. I remember talking to many of these people and getting to know them and their details. And several of these people on these following slides are people that either had type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. And I'm just making the point here that this is a significant weight loss, people. And again, eating carbohydrate-rich foods, you can see amazing, amazing transformations here. And there's a few more. Mark Ramirez on the bottom left there. He was part of our summit, good friend of ours. Just saw Mylan Ross on the bottom right at a conference. He's looking amazing. So in summary here, it's really basic. Insulin resistance is the main problem when living with diabetes. Even in type 1, you want to become insulin sensitive. We saw earlier in Christopher's slide. It's not something that needs to be addressed. Maximizing insulin sensitivity is the goal, and it also leads to overall increased health for preventing the chronic diseases that we do not want. And the way to do this is a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet. So that's the way to do it. Okay. So guys, I want to make sure that you're still with us. Write in the chat box, would you like to hear more about our coaching program? Do you want to learn how these people got these results, how Bob Blackburn had his success, why these people on the Forks Over Knives website have all their success? Write in the chat box, yes, if you would like us to continue with that. I hope you're still with us. And I hope we didn't go too fast and you can digest this information. Okay, great. Comments are coming in. I'm hearing yes. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, good. All right, I'm glad you guys are still with us. So let's proceed here. So we have a coaching program. It's called the Mastering Diabetes Program, and it is an online coaching program where we work with people from all over the world, teaching them how to maximize their insulin sensitivity using a low-fat, plant-based, whole food program. All right. So what type of foods does this include? Super colorful, delicious, healthy foods. A lot of people call, some of the starch-based foods comfort foods. The food is amazing. There is not restriction on this program. So let's make it clear. What do we eat on this program? What foods get the optimal results? What foods actually improve insulin sensitivity? So we're going to go through green light, yellow light, and red light. So the green light foods are foods that you can eat in abundance. Eat pretty much as you want. Obviously, you could really push that to the limit and cause a problem. But in general, these are foods that you can eat to being comfortably satiated. So fruits, non-starchy vegetables, starchy vegetables, beans, lentils, and peas, green leafy vegetables, talking like greens there, intact whole grain, which is super important. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Herbs and spices. Eat these foods in abundance. So what are the yellow light foods? So high-fat foods, even if they are plant-based, lead to insulin resistance. And again, anybody on this webinar using insulin, you can see that immediately. It's very easy to see. And when you're tracking this, you can see it. If you're living with non-insulin dependent diabetes, tracking your fasting blood glucose, you can see when there's more, even if it's plant-based fats, causing blood glucose to rise. So we have nuts and seeds here, avocados, coconuts, olives. Now, pastas, breads, why are those in the yellow light category? Those are in the yellow light category because they are processed. They're more refined. So On the left here, you have beans, lentils, and peas. You could take beans and you could make like a bean pasta these days. That's a great alternative. So these foods are okay. They can be eaten in moderation. It's not saying no, don't ever eat them. But we have to note that anything that's processed is not going to be as good as eating the original whole food as it came in nature. So it's better to just eat the beans in their whole form. What's in the red light category? All animal products are in the red light category. And oils, as Tara was saying, one of the most processed foods on the planet, basically just fat with maybe a little bit of nutrients left, but mostly just fat. Refined sugars are completely out, and things like pastries and breads where you have, really processed stuff, lots of sugar, lots of fat, that's a problem. And I'll also make a note here in the yellow light category, we have breads, we have sprouted breads. So even, sprouted bread, again, is not ideal. It's better to just have the intact whole grain. Another example there is some people will have, wheat pancakes or oat bread or something like that. I mean, if you're going to have oat bread, it'd be better to have had oat groats. That's the intact whole form of oat if you're going to eat that. So the same thing with wheat. Instead of a wheat bread or a wheat pancake or something, it's better to have just had wheat berries. That's the intact whole grain. It's a big part of our program. So what do these foods look like? These are pictures from the Forks Over Knives website. These meals are beautiful. They are colorful. They taste amazing. And like I said earlier, a lot of people consider these foods comfort foods. So you can also have fruit on our program, abundance amount of fruit. And again, whole fruit. So here you have a picture of grapes and figs and mangoes. And people are very scared to eat grapes. They're all high glycemic. And as you improve your insulin sensitivity, you'll be surprised at how much you can actually enjoy grapes. You learn how to do combinations. I have greens in these meals. You have a beautiful salad here. There's bananas. These foods are a big part of our program. And when you saw those testimonials of people that lost all that weight and Bob Blackburn, these are people who are enjoying fruit. These are pictures from Tara's Instagram here. So you can see lots of starch in these meals here. And again, everything is in its whole form. Nothing has been processed other than just the cooking process. And these meals are colorful, nourishing, and really delicious. So that's the basics of the program. How do you implement that? So that is what we do. That's what we teach people in addition to moving their body. How does this whole thing work? So we provide people with 3 tools, and each tool is very powerful in and of itself. So the first tool is we have a online course, and the key is that we've developed this in a step-by-step manner. So people can take it one step at a time. It's very difficult to make a million changes at once. So it's laid out in a way where you can do it at your own pace when you're ready and move on next step when you are ready. We're going to go into that into detail. We have a private Facebook community, which I love so much. This is really powerful. We're going to go into that. And then we do weekly or monthly Q&A video conferences where you can see us, we can see you if we turn on your camera, and we can connect on a deeper level than Facebook allows. So let's go to the online course. What's included in here, obviously it works on all devices, easy to access, and everything is broken up into different modules. So there is in the beginning, you have a welcome module, goal setting, how to start slow and really see this as a long-term program. Don't try and jump too far ahead. And we work on changing breakfast. That's the first thing. Change breakfast. And people are shocked, even after just changing breakfast, the amount of results that they get and how much better they feel, even when they haven't changed their other meals, is pretty amazing. And once you've mastered breakfast, it doesn't matter if it takes you 2 weeks. It doesn't matter if it takes you 3 weeks. Whatever it takes, once you feel good, I got breakfast under control, then you move into module 2. And this is where we get into some more lessons. You see weight loss here, you see calorie density, understanding salt, oil, sugar, a lot of detailed stuff. We go into the decision tree, which is super important, whether you're living with insulin-dependent or non-insulin-dependent diabetes. Decision tree is a very, very important lesson. And we go into constructing the perfect lunch, right? When you're ready, we have recipes, recipe guides, And once you've done that, once you've mastered breakfast and lunch, then you can move on. Here we get into the dinner. So once we're into this lesson, this is when it's time to clear out the pantry and really stay focused. You got all meals cleaned up. It's really important to have a really good environment and be surrounded by healthy food. Intermittent fasting is a super, super important part, especially for assessing basal insulin. We go into that. Then we get into some fitness, working on optimizing that, having a plan, being accountable. We go into some more details here: grocery shopping, saving money, wholesale markets, social situations, huge, huge part of succeeding on this lifestyle. You gotta learn how to navigate those. Then we add bonus lessons. So every week there are new recipes, new lessons, all added every single week in the bonus lessons section. Here you have some 10-minute meals. We did a lesson on the sodium rules, so people understand that. We have a shopping for rice lesson. We did that while we were in a Walmart in South Dakota, teaching people how to do this lifestyle pretty much anywhere. Here's some more insulin timing. It's a super important lesson for females, how menstruation affects blood glucose, really important stuff. Okay, the Facebook group. So this is, I love every aspect of this program, but this is probably personally my favorite. And this is where we are literally in touch every single day, as often as you want to be. Like, if you can write, you want to write a post in there several times a day, please do. We want to hear from you. We encourage interaction. We want to be there for you every step of the way. We reply to posts within 24 hours. Our team is there to make sure that you have your questions answered every single step of the way. So what type of posts do we request in the group? We like to see pictures of what you're eating. So you can see other people's pictures, get inspired by them, and get some recipe ideas, see what they're doing. We want to see your blood glucose measurements, what's going on. When you're filling out a decision tree, that gives us a whole snapshot of what's going on your entire day. What's going on with your medication, keep us updated, because when you post about that, then other people in the group who've been through the same thing, maybe already got off that medication, or they went through the process of reducing it, they can comment and share their experience. We can help you work with your doctor. So we are not physicians, we don't change your medication, but we teach you how to communicate with your doctor, be in touch with your doctor, and make really important decisions in regards to your medical team. Traveling and social situations. So I literally tell people, it's all about planning. So if you can figure out what restaurant you're going to, or you think about, hey, I'm going to this city, I'm looking for restaurants, people on the team are going to help you. And we ask people to post the menu, like post the menu of the restaurant you're going to. And as a team, we're going to say, what's the best thing to order there? And maybe you didn't have time. Maybe it was a last minute restaurant situation. You went there and maybe you struggled or something. You can post the menu afterwards and say, oh, this is where I went, this is what I ordered, this is what I did. And you'll get feedback. And you're going to learn from that through the group, through Cyrus and our team and me, everybody sharing what's the best way to deal with restaurants and traveling and all that stuff. It really comes down to logistics, and having a group of people who's going to help you work through that is important. And troubleshooting difficult times. This making lifestyle change, trying to get the results of the people that we showed you earlier in this webinar. If you want those results, there's going to be challenges. It's not rainbows and unicorns. And having a community where you can express those challenges and talk about it and get people, have people write back saying, look, I went through the same thing. Here's how I dealt with it. It really is priceless. So we have a very safe, open community. So these are examples of some posts that we will see in our group. A beautiful meal right there. Somebody sharing chronometer data. Somebody having a beautiful breakfast, sharing their blood glucose reading. Somebody saying this is like the lowest they've ever seen since they started recording it. So this person's just starting to get some results. Just starting. Blood work results. This person's very happy. Just making progress every step of the way and sharing it with us. Here we have pictures of decision trees, some meals. Over on the right is Tammy sharing how she was on a vacation. Just totally happy that she could finally make it to the top of this ruin she was at. I think that was in Mexico. And here we go. This is a post of somebody saying, hey, look, I'm struggling. I want some accountability. I want to, get some support here. And that's what our community is for. It's not just, your typical social media only post all the positive things that's going on. this is really a place for support and really getting nitty-gritty and making change that's going to last. And one of the big benefits of a program and being with a group is that when you're around a bunch of people that are having success and things are working, and you're with people who are doing things the way that you're looking to do them, success is contagious. Like, you're just like, I'm going to do this too. And we all are out there in an environment where eating a healthy lifestyle is not necessarily supported. And it is a challenge. And maybe our coworkers and our family, and it's just all day long, it's just nothing but a challenge. But to have a place to go to and a group to tap into and a large volume of people is really, really nice. So I just want to share another testimonial here. This is Lindsay. We just posted her testimonial on YouTube. Here's just another example again, improving insulin sensitivity. This Lindsay, her A1C improved, but look at this. Her carbohydrate intake goes from 175 grams per day up to 500, okay? And her total insulin use goes down. She loses weight, cholesterol improves, A1C goes down. Again, all while eating high carbohydrate foods and on a low fat program. It's basically what this whole webinar is about. Teach you guys it works. So the third part of our program is the monthly Q&A calls. So basically, any question you have should have been answered in general within 24 hours in the Facebook group. You shouldn't have to wait an entire month to get a question answered. But the point of these calls is to go into some things more in depth and to have a conversation where maybe you can go back and forth a little bit with us, and we can have a little bit more of a conversation in person, live, fire things back and forth is really valuable. So you submit questions beforehand, we go through those, and then towards the end, when we've gone through all the questions, people ask questions live on the call, and we stay there until everybody feels like their questions have been answered. And these calls are really fun. We use a software called Zoom, and this is where, using the Zoom software, we can actually see each other. So that's really good. I mean, what's an example of some things that we would go through here? Somebody saying, hey, my doctor wants me to do this. How do I talk to my doctor? That's a situation where we can do some role play. We can go back and forth. It's very beneficial. Somebody saying, look, I'm having some cravings. Let's talk about that. Talking about reducing medication. We can go into detail, and other people on the call can share their experiences. Talking about exercise in a very detailed manner. We can totally do that. Again, maybe a role play situation, dealing with family. These are things we can go into more in depth on a live Q&A call. Those are always recorded. If you ever miss them, you can always listen to the recording. Previous calls are in the archive. All our previous webinars are in the archive, so you can always access that material. Okay, so what does it cost to join our coaching program? So let's review what this program is worth. So an online course, all the information in that course, it took us a long time to put that together. It is really robust. In and of itself, its annual value is $1,200. The Facebook group, that support every single day, year-round, is valued at $1,000 annual value. Weekly members counts, we're putting in new information every single Friday. New, whether it's recipes, whether it's tips, whether it's an expert interview, new stuff every single week, valued at $1,500. The Q&A calls, you get those once a month for the entire year. We have those at $1,200. If you add the whole thing up, it's $4,900. Obviously, that is not how much it's going to cost to work with us and get the results that you want to get and the results that we want you to get. So we have a special bonus. If you would like to have private coaching. So we also have options where, look, there's only so much time that Cyrus will have. So we can have limited availability to work with people in private calls and to do text messaging. And this is actually one of my favorite things ever to do with people, is to get in a text thread where we are literally going back and forth all day long. Okay, like, what are you eating for breakfast? What's your plan? What's your plan for lunch? What's your plan for dinner? When are you cooking the food? When are you buying the food? Oh, you have a challenging work situation. For us to just go back and forth all day long, the amount of progress and learning that goes on every time I do that with clients, and Cyrus does that, is incredible. And even with people living with insulin-dependent diabetes, sort of learning how to use the decision tree and see those decisions and when necessary, communicate with your doctor on making adjustments. It's really priceless. So if you sign up on this program, you're going to get sign up for the program, you're going to get this special benefit because you are on this webinar. So obviously it includes everything else, but in addition, you're going to get 2 weeks of it. So usually a whole month of this, $600. If you get the bonus here, we're going to give you 2 free weeks of that, which is 2 calls, 1 per week, and then text messaging as much as necessary. So you add this all together, total cost $5,275. Like I said, we're obviously not going to charge you that much. So here's how it works. We have a membership program. So our program is a service where you can be a part of it for as long as you want and participate as long as you want. If you sign up for the yearly option, which I will put a link in the, we'll put a link in the chat box. And to do that, if you sign up for the $249, this is for the entire year. So you get the entire year. So for less than $1 a day, you're part of the program. If you sign up for that, within the next 48 hours, you'll be able to have the special bonus. So if you have any questions about that, we will cover it, and hopefully there are some questions. I'm going to make sure that I paste the link in the chat box. So we'll go here and go here. Is there questions on the document here? Okay, good. We are going to go through some questions, and we will load this. Okay, so there should be a link in the chat box now. And now I will go and go back to this. And I don't think, what did we do here? We did share. Go to share screen, show your entire screen. There we go. From current slide. Okay. So now Heather, who's been in the chat box, hopefully answering any questions that have come up, has put together a little document for us to answer questions. So I'm just going to go through these questions right here, and let's see what we got. So Robbie, do you eat whole grains, nuts, seeds, and legumes along with fruits and vegetables? So personally, I eat just fruits and vegetables. That's a personal choice. That's my version of following the low-fat, plant-based whole food diet. So to follow, our program really comes down to essentially, the dietary part comes down to 2 things. Number 1, do not eat more than 15% of your total calories from fat. Another way to say that is don't eat more than 30 grams of total fat. So if you can get in that range of total fat consumption, that's good. Then the second thing is eat whole foods. Do not eat whole plant foods, okay? If you put those 2 things together, you can have amazing success. So I personally, so somebody who maybe doesn't want to eat gluten or somebody doesn't want to eat grains, that's okay. They can still fit within the low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, get all the nutrition they need, and see amazing results. So I personally don't, but of course, we teach people how to follow the whole wide range of this dietary approach, and people get success in whichever version that they decide to follow. So it can be very personalized. Would the course be helpful if I want to avoid developing diabetes in the future? Yes, absolutely. So there's no question about it. If you want to have the most energy you've ever had, you want to feel amazing, you want to reach your ideal weight, then following a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet and having a community of people to be there with you every step of the way of implementing that into your lifestyle is going to be a benefit. There's no question about it. And like we say on the slide here, like the whole thing is a money-back guarantee. If at any point somebody is not happy, like, you know what, I just not getting the results I want, I'm not getting the support I want, you email us, team@masteringdiabetes.org, and we take care of it. We honestly have never had that happen where we had somebody say, I'm not getting what I think I paid for and I want a refund. That has not happened. We don't let that happen. But if you have that concern, always know it's a risk-free opportunity. Okay, someone's asking some questions about specific foods. Oats, potato chips, many people. Okay, so specific foods. Tara, do you want to just answer?
Sure, yeah. So it sounds like some people who are actually in our coaching program have joined for this webinar. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining and have been answering these questions. But just to clarify for any questions that are still out there. So for things like oats, some people, when they eat rolled oats, the standard style of oatmeal that you'll get in the grocery store, they will see a spike in blood glucose just because those foods, like Robbie was explaining earlier, are not in their whole form. They're more processed, meaning that the body does not have to do as much work to digest them and break them down, which can cause a spike in blood glucose. So for optimal health, for optimal results, we recommend eating the whole food or as close to the whole food as possible. So for oats, that means oat groats, which are usually found in the bulk section of a store, or can be purchased on Amazon. Bob's Red Mill makes them, or steel cut oats is the next best thing, and most stores carry steel cut oats. Grits, that's usually corn grits. So again, that's not a whole food. That's the corn that has been broken down. It's not quite a flour, so it's better than corn flour, but again, it's very processed, so it's not ideal. Potato chips are made in oil. We definitely don't recommend that. If you want to make homemade potato chips, you can slice potatoes pretty thinly and bake them in the oven and then broil them to get them crispy on the outside. You can make homemade tortilla chips by cutting up tortillas and roasting them in the oven. We actually just taught one of our group members how to do that the other day. And just today I was in the Facebook group and she said that she had made them and they were amazing. There are lots of ways to eat these foods in a healthy way and still enjoy them. And then pasta, Robbie already went over that, but pastas are actually better than breads in terms of blood glucose control because they're more tightly packed. So it takes longer for the body to break them down and digest them. They're a yellow light food though. They're not a whole food, so they're not a completely green light food. But they're also, we're not saying you can never eat those foods. And especially if those are going to help you to make the transition, then definitely you can include them. We recommend the bean pastas or the whole grain like quinoa and brown rice pastas more than the wheat pastas just because they are less processed.
Perfect. Okay, so have you tried the alkaline diet with Dr. Robert Young for type 1 cure? Okay, this is a great question. So we actually, one of the testimonials he uses, he probably still uses it, is her name is Brittany. And she actually came to one of the retreats that we ran and has followed our program and achieved her best health possible. But the point here is the Robert Young program, the Gabriel Cousens program, any version of a more plant-based, very low carbohydrate program, what you're doing there is you're changing your energy system, okay? So if you follow that program very well, which I did for about a month, and I got the typical results, which is if you're living with type 1 diabetes, you will end up taking the least amount of insulin, least total insulin you've probably ever taken if you do it properly. But your carbohydrate intake is so low, so your insulin sensitivity is not good at all. So if you're eating 30 grams of total carbohydrate per day and injecting 10 units, which is roughly where I was, that's a 3-to-1 ratio. And if you do, now what I'm doing, I'm eating more like 750, 800, sometimes 900 grams of total carbohydrate per day and injecting roughly in the high 30s to maybe 40-ish units of insulin. So you do that insulin sensitivity, now we're more in like the 20-to-1 ballpark. And so basically taking less insulin as a person living with type 1 diabetes isn't necessarily a great goal unless you know that your body is producing its own insulin at the same time. So if you're actually reversing the disease and you've gotten your pancreas to start producing its own insulin, then that's a good thing. And when somebody figures that out, they're gonna win like a Nobel Peace Prize. And we're all looking for that. But that's not the case. So those people, again, I know these people, I respect them. We respect all these people doing the low carb stuff with a passion, like putting in that effort, like that's amazing. But we just respectfully disagree with you. You're insulin resistant and you're increasing your chances of other conditions. And it's something that, we just don't we don't promote. But if somebody wants to do it, go right ahead. More power to them.
So someone asked about Alzheimer's prevention and said that people are encouraged to have coconut oil and eat a ketogenic diet, including fats like olive oil, avocado, nuts. So Robbie and I were actually, and Cyrus, the three of us, were all at a nutrition conference for the past 4 days. We just got back yesterday. And at the conference, there was a set of 2 doctors who went on stage and talked about research in Alzheimer's prevention. And also, they not only were able to find research in preventing Alzheimer's, but also slowing or stopping progression of the disease in people that already are experiencing cognitive decline. And what they found is that saturated fat actually leads to the progression of Alzheimer's disease. So even though fat is important for the brain, you don't need to eat a high-fat diet in order to get that fat to the brain. And really, the foods that are protective against the progression of cognitive decline are plant-based foods, these low-fat, high-carbohydrate foods that we've been talking about, especially leafy greens, berries, things like that. Sweet potatoes are also really great. So if you are interested in, they actually wrote a book, and if you're interested in reading that book or learning more about it, I linked it to someone in the chat box if you scroll down. The doctors are Dean and Aisha Shirzai, and it's called The Alzheimer's Solution. But they are cutting-edge doctors in this field, and it's really amazing the research that they've done and the people that they work with in their own clinic. They've experienced these results firsthand. And so really, this goes right along with what we've been saying. Insulin resistance is the underlying cause of Alzheimer's progression, or one of the main underlying causes. So really, if you're using our program to prevent or reverse insulin resistance, you're not only improving your diabetes health, but also your cognitive health.
Wonderful. Okay, so we have one person asking us that they come from Japan and grew up eating fruits, and right now they're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in April 2017, currently following a high-fat, low-carb diet, and A1C has gone from 14.8 to 8.2, so that's progress. So basically, I'm not sure if there was a question there, but again, what we're here saying is you get to decide if maybe you like the high-fat, low-carb habit. Maybe you just really enjoy those foods, you enjoy that diet, you have no desire to eat lots of fruit, you have no desire to eat potatoes and rice and beans, and you just don't want them. And you really want to try and look like the woman in the blue dress and have an amazing story and see what happens. Like, if that's what you want to do, like, go right ahead. Like, I wish you nothing but the best. We're here saying, trying to present, look, the whole world, our community out there is saying carbohydrates are the problem, sugar's the problem. So that drives us nuts. Like, it's just not true. So we're here to tell you that's not true. And number two, if you want to follow the program, you want to try this, you want to get the results that you see on the screen, the people in our program are getting, the success stories I showed you from Forks and Rise, if you want those results, we're here to show you how to do it. We're here to walk you through that every step of the way. And we're here to remind you that any single benefit, especially for those living with type 2 or prediabetes, any benefit you could possibly have gotten on a ketogenic program or a low-fat program, you can also...
High-fat program.
Yeah, high-fat program. You can also get while following a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet and eating these amazing, colorful, delicious foods that people have been told they should not be eating because they're living with diabetes. That's what we're here saying. So I hope that helps you. I think it's Sumi. And if you have anything else you want to add in the chat box, let us know. Okay, so Joy says, blood glucose in the morning is still high, no matter if I fast 18 hours, mainly eat only whole foods too. Okay, I don't know if you're in our program or not, but if you're not, this is a situation where, we're just like, look, let's get into the nitty-gritty and let's work on this. So in our program, we have people doing a nutrition log, we have people posting pictures of what they're eating. Let's figure out exactly what's going on. We have people filling out the decision tree. Stay in touch with us right on the Facebook group every day. Give us an update. What's going on? What are you doing? And let's work this out. Let's figure it out. We figure out the problem. We find the problem, and we can make it work. So.
All right. So Alberto said, how do you explain seeing a spike in blood glucose at 200 after eating a bowl of bean soup? So that's a great question. As I explained earlier, if you're seeing a spike in your blood glucose after eating a high carbohydrate food or a high carbohydrate meal, that is a sign that you're experiencing insulin resistance. So that means that if you think back to that photo that I showed of the cell with the yellow fat globules clogging up the cell, that's what you're experiencing. And the door, insulin is not able to open that door and let the glucose in. So that's why it leads to a spike, because it's floating around in your bloodstream. So if you're not part of our program, that means that as you start into the program, as you start eating a low fat, high carbohydrate diet and you clear the fat out of the cell, you will no longer see that. And if you are in our program, you might still see a spike in blood glucose like that for the first few days, maybe even for the first week or 2 or even 3. But as time goes on, that will happen less and less and eventually not happen anymore at all, because you are becoming more insulin sensitive and once again able to eat those carbohydrate-rich foods.
And I'll also add to that there could be a situation, again, we don't know the details. This is why we need to work with people in the program. But there could be a situation where somebody's diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and they've had it for a long time, and their pancreas simply is not producing enough insulin. And in that case, you are more like a type 1.5 diabetic. You're more towards that range where you're just simply not producing enough insulin. And there, you have to gather that data, you do some blood work, and you figure out, and then you get to decide what you want to do with that information. What we would do in a situation like that is teach people that having to inject a little bit of insulin is not the end of the world, as long as we're only getting you to be injecting an appropriate amount. So if your pancreas is not producing enough of its own insulin, either because you're living with type 1 or type 1.5, or you've been type 2 for so long that the pancreas is exhausted, our goal as coaches is to get you to a point where you're only using what your body would have normally used if your pancreas was working perfectly. So everybody your friends, your dog, these produce insulin. Insulin is a necessary required hormone. It's not the enemy. It doesn't, when secreted or injected in appropriate amounts, does not cause weight gain, which is people are very scared about. And you saw this in our testimonials, and you can see it in me and Cyrus and what we're eating and our clients. So insulin's not the enemy. So in that case, if that's a situation and you're like, look, I'm doing everything right and I'm still seeing these numbers, then we got to dig deeper and we got to figure out what's going on. Okay, so Randy says, how long after starting a whole food plant-based diet can I expect blood sugar spikes to subside? It's a great question. It's $1 million question. Everybody asks that question when they start. And the bottom line is it's different for everybody. And my reply is there's only one way to find out. And that is to apply the program as best as possible, best as you possibly can, and optimize every single aspect that you can and see what happens. And you really have nothing to lose. I can promise you things are not going to get worse. They're only going to get better. The question becomes how quickly are they going to get better? So I hope that's helpful. Meg says, do the spikes actually subside, or are you just lowering your insulin amounts? I'm not sure I understand that question. I'm not sure I understand that question, but I will try and say that when you start, if you let's say you're living with type 2 diabetes and you just start transitioning to this program. So you got type 2 diabetes because you're insulin resistant. The cause of type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance. So you start doing this program. The first day or something, you're eating a high fat diet the day before. The first day for breakfast, you go and you try and eat, a bunch of mangoes and bananas or something, and you see a high blood glucose reading. Okay, and then you start following our program, and over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, you do have that exact same breakfast, and all of a sudden you don't see any kind of abnormal crazy spike. You see a healthy rise in blood glucose and a healthy drop, which is a normal part of human physiology. In that case, what happened there is your insulin sensitivity improves. So your total insulin secreted probably did go down, but it's the efficiency of the insulin to work. The ability of the insulin to take the glucose out of your bloodstream into your cells has improved. That's the whole point of our program. That's what we're doing here, is improving insulin sensitivity. So, the spike went away because you are now insulin sensitive once again. And you're insulin sensitive because you have gotten rid of the fat stored in tissues that are not designed to store fat.
All right, Wilma asked here, if someone is in ketosis and losing weight, are they necessarily insulin resistant? And so that's what Robbie was talking about earlier when he was talking about a glucose tolerance test. So if someone is in ketosis and losing weight, that can look really great. But if that person eats a cup of berries or, a mango or a single potato and they see a spike in their blood glucose just from that one small food that is high in carbohydrates, that means that they are experiencing insulin resistance and that their body cannot get the glucose out of the bloodstream into the cell. So that's the main way to test it, is just, you can do a glucose tolerance test with, the glucose that they send you, or you can simply just eat a banana and see what happens.
There you go. Okay. So Julie's saying no more than 30 grams of fat per day with a question mark. So the answer is yes. We're saying if you follow a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, the only exception to that would be somebody who's super athletic and eating tons of calories. Then their total fat consumption could go up. But again, that's why we also say 15% of total calories from fat, because then it doesn't matter how athletic you are, how much food you're eating. It's averages out anyways. It's the same thing. So the answer is yes. If you eat less than 30 grams of total fat per day, and that will happen automatically when eating the appropriate foods. And again, our program is not about being, counting calories and counting this and using nutrition software. We don't want that. We use the software in the short term to teach a lesson, to show objectively what is going on so you can observe. The long-term goal is you know what to eat, you know how to eat, you know what's the appropriate amount of more fat-rich foods to include in your diet, and you don't have to think about food anymore. And you just focus on your life, you focus on what you love, and you just figured it out, and that's it. So hopefully that answers that question. Does this work well for people who also suffer from hypothyroidism, Hashimoto? So Cyrus, as many of you may know from other webinars, he got hit with 3 autoimmune conditions at once, and Hashimoto's is one of them. So we are not here proclaiming that you're going to get off of such medication. Are you going to improve your health, improve your energy, stuff like that? Yes, that we do pretty much promise. You will improve your energy, you'll improve your overall health. Are you going to reverse thyroid disease? We're not guaranteeing that. Okay. What fats would you suggest would be good to eat and not cause any chronic conditions in the future? Okay, that's a good question.
Yeah, so basically, the point I would make there is that all whole foods have fat in them, whether it's a banana or brown rice or a sweet potato or quinoa or even leafy greens like spinach, arugula, beets, chard, like all of these things. They all have fat in them. All whole foods have carbohydrates, protein, and fat. So you're going to get fat in your diet no matter what. And some people wonder there's these fat-soluble vitamins, and do I need high-fat foods in order to absorb those vitamins properly in the body? And the answer is no. When you're eating a meal that has fat-soluble vitamins in it, which basically all of them will, as long as you're eating whole foods and not processed foods, you're going to have enough fat from the foods in the meal in order to get those nutrients. And we do allow, if someone wants to eat a little bit of avocado or a little bit of nuts, this is not a no-fat diet. This is a low-fat diet. And like I said, all whole foods have some fat. And if you want to eat a little bit of the higher fat foods, you totally can do that just in small amounts. So I hope that answered that question.
Okay, so Julie's asking, do those with PCOS need any adjustments? Okay, so here's the deal. I'm not complaining I'm a PCOS expert. Cyrus has looked into that a lot. We're going to do a webinar on that. We're going to write some articles on that. It's very important. I'm not going to try and answer detailed questions on that topic. What I'm going to say is, if you are interested in changing your diet, you're ready, you're like, you know what, I want to change my diet. I want to find the solution to the PCOS. Send us an email, team@masteringdiabetes.org, and let's continue a dialogue there and see how we can help. The bottom line is, adopting this lifestyle can only help.
Yeah, and I would also just tag on to that to say that the underlying cause of PCOS is insulin resistance, just like diabetes. So a program like ours will 100% help you in that.
Okay, so Tara, this person says, can we eat quinoa?
Yes, please eat quinoa. Please eat as much quinoa as you want. Quinoa is an awesome grain. It's actually a pseudo grain, and it tastes amazing and is totally healthy, and you should definitely eat it.
Okay, so Scott says, only eat in restaurants. Heather's been helping me. Okay, so I think Scott's saying maybe you're in the program or maybe somehow Heather's been helping you. But look, if you only eat in restaurants, if you travel a lot, you're just on the road, you eat in restaurants a lot, I promise you, you can still make this work. It does require more planning. It requires some logistics. But, I mean, believe it or not, even like steakhouses are some of the best places to eat on the road, where you can get a salad, baked potato, and steamed vegetables. There's a way to figure it out. There's a way to navigate it. There's a way to travel if you want to make your own food. I mean, I've traveled plenty in my life. I'm not on the road all the time, but I travel plenty, and I make it work every single time for over 10 years, and I'm eating just fruits and vegetables. So it can be done. We help people do it, and really, at the end of the day, it comes down to planning and logistics. You have to think about these things in advance. You have to understand what situations you're going to be in. You have to have a backup plan when a situation doesn't go right and know how to handle that. So it can be done, and I know that our Facebook group is super valuable and helpful. Now, you'd be surprised when you make a comment, like you're in a sticky situation or something, how quickly somebody will reply, and then our team, certainly within 24 hours, but it's all about planning.
Joan said, I'm assuming that members who joined a few months ago would not have the bonus available to them. Send us an email at team@masteringdiabetes.org, and we'll get back to you about that. So anyone else who's in that boat, you're already in our coaching program and just joining us to learn more. Thanks for being here, and send us an email if you'd like to do this. Karen asked about some research that supports what we're talking about that she can offer to her physician who is encouraging her to eat a low-carb diet. I will say that in Dr. Neil Barnard's book, the one that was on the bottom of the screen, he has a page that is specifically written for people to take to their doctors and show their doctor so that their doctor can learn more about this lifestyle and why this approach works. But if you would like some actual research studies or anything like that, again, just send us an email to team@masteringdiabetes.org, and we can send you a number of studies that you can print out and show to your physician.
Okay, so student says, I have stage 5 kidney disease. My is down, I think she's saying her A1C is down to 5.6. What would you recommend to gain weight? Okay, I mean, stage 5 kidney disease is it's a serious situation. You really got to work with your medical team in that situation. If you want us to help you work with your medical team, send us an email, team@masteringdiabetes.org. We'll see what we can do.
And in terms of gaining weight, if you look into calorie density, there's an article on the Forks Over Knives website about calorie density that really helps you to learn how to adjust the foods that you're eating so that you're eating primarily foods that have more calories per pound, which will enable you to gain weight by just changing around the specific foods that you eat rather than necessarily the amount of food that you eat. Someone else asked about omega-3 and fish oils. So fish oil is kind of the new snake oil. It's been touted to have all of these benefits, but really so often it is rancid and is not high quality, and also just doesn't really give the heart health benefits that it actually says that it does. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, this whole topic, there's so much to be said on this. But the whole thing about thinking you need to eat more omega-3s, it's completely misguided. As a culture, our problem is that we are having too much omega-6. So the solution is not to eat more omega-3. And when you eat a low-fat, plant-based, whole food diet, your ratio of 6:3 balances out. You don't need to worry about it. It's really, the whole thing is blown out of proportion. It's a lot of marketing, making a lot of money.
And there's also, it's not that fish is not the only source of omega-3s. You get omega-3s from seaweeds, from leafy green vegetables, from chia seeds, from ground flax seeds. There are definitely lots of foods in a plant-based diet where you can get omega-3s, so it's really not something that you need to worry about unless you are eating lots of processed foods, lots of oils, lots of things like that. So As long as you stick with our program, you should be 100% covered.
Okay, so PK is asking questions. Are flaxseed fish oils good for reducing insulin resistance? And also saying, are fruits and vegetables, flax smoothies good, or you suggest only salads? Okay, in general, this is just a basic dietary question. And I'm going to go back to what we covered on the green light, yellow light, red light slide. And one thing I want to constantly remind people of is that this whole thing of what to eat to feel amazing and to get results and reach your ideal body weight, all that stuff, is actually incredibly simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. So number one, are we saying only salads? No, definitely not. You have to focus on calorie density and eat foods that taste amazing, that have substance to them. So we're talking fruits, which have plenty of substance, especially the more calorie dense ones like bananas and plantains and figs and cherimoya and dates and stuff like that. And then foods like the whole grain category. We're talking about millet and oat and wheat berries and all that stuff. That stuff's great too. And then the starchy vegetables, things like potatoes, yams, squashes, those are very important. So we're not saying to eat only salads. We're saying to eat these whole foods in the green light category in their whole intact form as much as you desire. And your body will get full when you've had enough because of all the fiber and all the water content in there. And overeating is very, very difficult. So.
And Joan, I see, asked, would tofu fall under the yellow section? So just to cover that while we're talking about the foods, yes, tofu would be under the yellow section because it is a processed food and it's also high in fat, like you mentioned. And even edamame, which is the whole soybean or regular soybeans that almost look like white beans, again, those would technically be yellow foods. They're close to the green category because they're a whole food, but they really do tend to be higher in fat. They're often about 30% fat, 30% calories from fat or more. So those would be yellow foods. Let's see what else. Joy, can I sign up to begin on October 16th? Yes. Send us an email, team@masteringdiabetes.org. Gina, will you be conducting any more retreats? Gina, we love retreats. We really love retreats. We are not going to have any in 2018, probably, but we do plan to bring them back soon.
You never know. Anything is possible. Anything is possible,
If we find an awesome retreat center, maybe that will change.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
But right now we are really focused on this online program that we've created and making sure that everybody there has the support they need to get the amazing results that this program gets when you follow it. So here we go. Kate says, how do you figure out how to bolus your insulin if you're a type 1 on an insulin pump? I guess you still count carbs, but change the insulin to carb ratio. Okay, it's a great question. Kate, yes, this is super important. So as people living with type 1, as you become more insulin sensitive, you start following this program, the whole insulin game changes. Your basal changes and your mealtime dosages change. And the way we work with people through this is we empower you to see these patterns by using the decision tree. And the decision tree makes it all clear, and it's got a whole system on what your predicted ratio, then your actual ratio, then you make adjustments, and then you do that on a day-to-day basis, and you use the Facebook group. You post in the Facebook group what's going on, and when you fill that out completely, where it's got your total carbohydrate, your total fat, when you're exercising, when you're testing the blood glucose, the decision tree shows everything, then this whole game starts to make sense. And it's a very fun process as people see their insulin sensitivity improve. And for females, so, for all type 1s, we got to figure out the basal rate. You have to figure out the basal rate. If the basal's off, you're just going to be shooting in the dark with the mealtime ratios. So we figure out the basal, we optimize that through intermittent fasting. And we do that, you can do different ranges of intermittent fasting. You don't have to do the whole 24 hours. You can do windows. But again, that's dependent on each person and their work schedule and what they can do. And we figure that out with each person. But you got to figure out the basal rate, make adjustments there. And then that's when we start to figure out the mealtime ratios. But you're correct. With a pump, we teach people who are using a pump how to not rely on the pump to do everything for you. We teach people using a pump how to do it in their head and can really understand what's going on and be able to make adjustments And then once you were really aware of the ratios at different times of day and different activity, you're really in much, much better control. And for women, the menstrual cycle is a big part of this. So we teach people how to optimize that through collecting data and objective information. And again, this whole process is empowering you to know what's going on, make better decisions, and at any point necessary, you communicate with your doctor about insulin changes. Okay, somebody, what else we got?
Benefits. I think, Robbie, maybe you should talk about, they asked about skin improvement.
Yes, absolutely. So I can speak on a personal experience for that one. When I was a teenager in high school, I had terrible acne, and I tried everything you can try, whether it was creams, whether it was pills that I had to take, and it was going to the doctor and doing, laser treatments, microdermal treatments. It was not good. And they ended up putting me on the most severe drug they had at the time. Maybe there's different ones now, but it was Accutane, and they made my parents sign a waiver because some people had committed suicide with that drug. So it's just not a good thing to be on. But anyways, I went on that drug. My skin was terrible. And when I changed my diet, that is when I saw a dramatic improvement. And I'm very happy with my skin right now. I get compliments quite frequently, so that's nice. And so, yes, when following this program, the physical benefits are literally innumerable. It's amazing. I mean, I was just on a coaching call last night. Woman saying how I used to take ibuprofen all the time just for aches and pains, and all of a sudden that's gone. So all kinds of things start to go away. When you're following the diet properly and getting all your nutrients, absolutely. Your hair should grow strongly. And the benefits are just amazing.
Someone asked, for a type 2, are blood sugar readings simply lowered, or do they actually normalize? We have a number of people in our program who came to us as type 2, living with type 2 diabetes, and now they've completely reversed it. So it's not just that the blood sugar readings simply lower. Often they do completely normalize, and you can get your A1C down to a level where you're no longer experiencing diabetes. You've completely cured it.
Absolutely. When you reverse the cause is insulin resistance. In that case, if your body's producing plenty of insulin, you're living with type 2 diabetes, your body's producing plenty of insulin, just not utilizing it properly. When you completely reverse insulin resistance, you take away the cause of the condition, and your pancreas was still producing enough insulin, then you absolutely get to a place where you were before the problem ever existed, and you're a non-diabetic. So completely normalized, no question about it.
The question about the seaweed salad, is that okay to eat? So most seaweed salads that I have seen or eaten in my life had sesame oil or some sort of oil on them, which would mean no. So seaweed itself is a totally fine food. If you want to make your own homemade sushi, if you want to make nori wraps, dulse is a great source of iodine. So seaweed itself is totally 100% on our program, but a seaweed salad that you would get at a Japanese restaurant or something probably has oil, and so we would recommend against getting that. Which tests to know how much insulin I am producing? Robbie, I know that you love that question, so I'll let you answer that.
So the basic test to start with is a C-peptide test. That's it's a good test to figure. Basically, C-peptide is produced in a 1-to-1 ratio with insulin, and then they break off, and then insulin floats in the bloodstream, or the C-peptide just floats in the bloodstream. And so basically, that test is used. One of the tests used to diagnose type 1 diabetes. So if somebody has a 0.5 or less, that's going to put them in the type 1 diabetes category. So get a C-peptide test and see what you learn there. And if further testing is necessary, we can walk you through that.
Okay, so Joanne has asked about smoothies. So I'll start by answering your question just by saying that we don't recommend smoothies ideally, just because when you're eating a smoothie, you're blending up the fruits and the foods, and again, that's a form of processing that can lead to a blood sugar spike. So ideally, we do not have you drink smoothies. Something though that can be really delicious is If you make it thicker and you make it almost like a sorbet or an ice cream, that is better, because then you're going to eat it more slowly, so it won't cause a spike in your blood glucose. And something that is great for a thickener in those, bananas. If you do just straight frozen bananas and you blend them in a food processor or a blender, it turns into what we call nice cream. It's a banana ice cream, and it's so delicious. It has basically the exact same consistency of regular ice cream. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. And same thing, you can blend just like frozen mango and strawberry or some blueberries or whatever and make yourself a sorbet. So that would be ideal rather than smoothies. But if you are going to make a smoothie, again, a thickener would just be bananas. Honestly, anytime that I make a smoothie, I don't use any liquid. I just use a lot of fruit, and that makes it blend up into a smoothie. And just be sure to drink it really slowly, and maybe have some greens on the side or something, just to make sure that you're not going to cause a spike in your blood glucose.
Beautiful. Okay, somebody's asking about juicing or smoothies. Did we just answer that?
We basically did. I'd say, like, just to talk about juicing specifically, if you're juicing straight greens or straight celery, some people do celery juice for digestion. If you're doing something like that, it's fine, but we do not recommend any fruit juices, because, again, the processing there, taking out the fiber, is going to cause a spike in your blood glucose.
Okay, somebody says, besides water, which is the most important? Which other fluids do you recommend? It's a great question. I mean, the water thing is, the one important point about water is this program, a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, you are eating large volumes of food that are loaded with water. The purest water you can consume is the water that comes in the food that you eat, because it's been purified by nature. And, again, for the context of this webinar, talking about, a low carbohydrate approach for getting, good blood glucose management and weight loss and all that versus our approach, this idea of like the volume of food you get to eat and the water and the fiber and the nutrients in there is a big deal. So water is important, but other fluids, what other fluids can people consume on this diet?
I mean, if someone wanted to drink tea, you could totally have hot tea. That's definitely a fluid you can drink. Other than that, I mean, there's not anything that's necessary. If someone wanted to have a little bit of kombucha that doesn't have added sugars, sure, have that. Sometimes people ask about alcohol. We don't recommend it. That's up to you. It is certainly not a health food. All alcohol is associated with an increased risk of death. But primarily, like, really, water is the only necessary fluid. And other than that, like I said, teas or things like that are fine. But really, like, there's no need to drink any juices or sports drinks or anything like that. So I would say that is the main thing. Okay, is it normal? Lisa asked, is it normal for triglycerides to go up after changing to whole food plant-based and hopefully releasing fat from within the cells? So we do sometimes see triglycerides go up after changing to a whole food plant-based diet, after changing to this dietary approach that we have recommended. So that might seem at first like a terrible thing. And it can be. It can raise questions and make you feel unsure about it. But the main thing is that we've talked to a number of physicians in this field about it, and we've also seen this in our own experience, that although triglycerides may, in a few cases, doesn't usually happen, but sometimes it does. And if you do see a spike in triglycerides after starting this diet, eventually they go down. So that's something that happens at first, and we aren't completely sure why. It might have something to do with the body switching over from burning the fat primarily and switching over to burning carbohydrates and using glucose for energy. But really the main point to make here is that if you see your triglycerides go up after starting this diet, you will most likely eventually see them go down a month or two later, and it's totally fine. You're healthy.
Correct. Okay. Now, Elaine's asking, first I want to answer Michelle's question about wine real quick. Because, Tara, we were talking about beverages, and alcohol is not something that we support or recommend. But listen, here's the deal. if you are coming into this, for us, the way we work with people is it completely is dependent on where you are and what your goals are. We are here to help you achieve your goals. So you decide what you want, and we're going to do everything we can to work with you every step of the way to get you there. And some people, you know, a little bit of wine, maybe their health isn't in a dire situation, and a little bit of wine is important to them. And if they're able to have a little bit of wine, that allows them to stick to a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet in all other areas of their life. So in that case, it's like, okay, like, you know, no big deal here. But I mean, again, it totally depends on what's going on, what your situation is. I mean, if somebody's got cancer or something and they're like really having problems, then, you know, we gotta figure out what's going on. And we got, again, even in that case, we got to figure out what's that person capable of doing. Like, how much change can you make? So that's where we work with you. That's where we find out. But in general, this whole concept of like having wine being associated with health benefits, to me, it's like a joke. Just eat grapes. Just eat whole grapes, and whatever benefit you got from the nutrients in that wine is just going to be tenfold better from just eating whole grapes. And again, people might be concerned about eating grapes because of the glycemic index and all this stuff. We have a whole lesson about this in the online course. But if you don't have to just eat grapes on their own. If you eat grapes with other foods, you see, the thing about the glycemic index is it doesn't discuss the impact of eating a food when you're consuming it with other foods. So if you're having a small amount of grapes with other fruits like berries, or it's in a salad, you're having some grapes in a large grape salad with a bunch of other ingredients, then we're not going to see this big problem with glucose spikes. So you really have to, you know, assess the context. And I love grapes. Grapes are just coming into season. And in Southern California, we get all kinds of amazing varieties. So I just say, eat your grapes.
Elaine says, how do greens with fruit, etc., help my blood glucose from rising? So this really goes back to our main point. I'm glad that you guys are continuing to ask questions because it really helps us to emphasize the main point here, which is that it's fat inside your muscle cells that is causing insulin resistance. So when you're eating low-fat foods, which include leafy greens, which include fruit, which include potatoes, whole grains, beans, peas, lentils, squashes, non-starchy vegetables like cauliflower, zucchini, eggplant, all of these foods are low in fat and high in carbohydrates. And when you're eating these low-fat foods, you are clearing the fat out of your cells. Your cells are finally able to use that fat that is clogged up in them. And when they do that, you reverse insulin resistance, you increase insulin sensitivity, the insulin starts working again, and it can let the glucose come into your cells, and you no longer see a blood glucose spike. So that is how greens and fruit and all of these low-fat plant-based foods can help you to normalize your blood glucose. And I think that might be the last question that we have for now. Is there anything else that anyone would like to ask?
I think I saw a comment come in. Do you recommend supplements with your program? For instance, B complex. So the only supplement that we like default want pretty much everybody on is B12. Other supplements we assess, you know, give our feedback and can communicate with your doctor based on blood work and what's going on. So that's a case-by-case basis. Let's see, what else do we have here? But excess calories should also be avoided. Yeah, so, I mean, on our program, we're teaching people to eat whole foods. And when you're eating nothing but whole foods, your ability to eat excess calories becomes very difficult because there's so much water, so much fiber in these meals that it just doesn't really happen. So, of course, you know, we're teaching people to learn how to be in touch with their body's natural feedback of when you've had enough and listen to that and not necessarily get stuck in numbers and data and stuff like that. And when you're eating the foods that we're designed to eat, it becomes a very simple, natural process. So I think we've answered pretty much all the questions here. Did we address coffee?
No. Okay. So coffee is, you know, if you're going to drink black coffee, I think, you know, we wouldn't recommend a lot of caffeinated drinks. But, you know, coffee is kind of one of those foods or substances that we're not really sure about. You know, there's evidence, there's research out there saying that it's beneficial. There's research out there saying that it's not beneficial, or that decaffeinated is better than caffeinated, or that black coffee is fine. So the main thing that I'll say about coffee is, if you are going to drink coffee, minimize it. And really the biggest thing is that we do not want you to put creamer in your coffee. We do not want you to put milk in the coffee. We definitely don't want you to do the Bob Harper method and put butter or ghee in your coffee. So if you're going to drink it straight black, you know, like we said, just minimize it. But if you are on our program, like, please do not put milk in your coffee. If you need to do like a little bit of almond milk or something like that, some people like that. But the main thing is to get the dairy products out of there. I mean, so often coffee, like someone stops at Starbucks and you're having something that's mainly like whipped cream and sugar. Yeah. You know, so.
Yeah. And I'll add to that, you know, part of our program, we really want you to get energy from eating a healthy diet and sleep. That's how we want people to improve their energy situation. And again, coffee is another one of those situations where it's not like the biggest deal ever type of thing. If you're like, I just really need it, and if I don't have my coffee, my life is a wreck and I can't follow the whole food plant-based diet, then it's like, okay, we got to focus on the high priority things. And again, that's a person by person situation. And again, it comes down to your goals. Like, you have to, part of working in our program and on our Q&A calls, something we bring up regularly is, what's your why? Like, why are you doing this? What's your goal? And you start there, and then we figure out what the course of action is to get you where you want to get to. So, okay, I think we've gone through all the questions. I really appreciate everybody who has come to this webinar and joined us, and your participation. It's been terrific. I really certainly would love to work with you guys. So we got, like we said, we got this special bonus. You get the 2 30-minute calls with me or Cyrus. You know, we assign people to one or the other, and you get the private text messaging, which I personally love. And I tell people, like, look, text me as much as you want. Like, I want this to be the best, most productive situation ever. And if you have a question, like, I want to answer it if you want support. So, you know, a lot of people that get in that situation, they're like afraid, like, oh, I really feel bad texting Robbie a million times. And I'm like, no, just keep texting me. Let's figure this out. And I tell you, the people that I've done that with, really just gotten so much out of that and learned so much. So I hope you guys take advantage of that opportunity, and I hope to be texting with you soon and talking to you on the phone. So that's it for tonight, guys. Again, thanks for coming, and I hope you all have a wonderful night. So I gotta go end it now. There we go.